Hello, glad to see you on the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
It was the kind of Sunday afternoon where the air feels too still, like something is about to shift, but no one's ready to admit it. The Carter house in Westfield was too quiet for how many people were crammed into its wine-colored dining room. The wallpaper hadn't changed since 1987, and neither had the attitude of the people sitting beneath it. Nathan, of course, had taken the head of the table without asking. My mother didn't blink. She never did when he acted like he owned the place. I sat 3 chairs down, next to Aunt Linda, who smelled like peppermint schnapps and perfume with a name no one could pronounce. I'd brought a salad. Not a store-bought one. A real one, with grilled peaches and arugula and a dressing I made myself from scratch. No one touched it. Nathan had brought ribs. Burnt ones. No one said a word about that either. He was telling some story, loud, self-congratulatory, with hand motions and that laugh that came from deep in his throat like he was always pleased with himself. He was talking about the company, which was funny, considering he didn't run it anymore. But no one here knew that yet. Not even Nathan. And then I told the client, he said, puffing out his chest just enough to make his shirt buttons look like they might lose the fight. If your margins look like that again, I'll have to start charging you for incompetence. He laughed before anyone else could, like he was cueing the room to applaud. A few chuckles followed. Uncle Ray rolled his eyes and passed me the bread without asking. I loved him for that. Then Nathan's eyes landed on me, like a hawk that just noticed a mouse blinking in the grass. He raised his wine glass with that shit-eating grin he'd perfected in prep school and nodded toward me. And how's your little... what is it? Design hobby? Crafts? Home decor? I can never remember. He smirked and added, she's more of a hobbyist than a professional, right? That landed like a slap made of condescension. I didn't flinch. I'd practiced this moment in my head too many times. I didn't owe him anything, not my reaction, not my anger, not even my words. So I stayed silent and sliced a piece of bread slowly, like it was the only thing worth concentrating on. Aunt Linda chuckled nervously. My mother offered me a glance that said, "Don't make a scene." That glance used to gut me. Now it just made me tired. But Uncle Ray leaned back in his chair like he was watching a rerun he'd seen before and was just waiting for the best part. He wiped his mouth with his napkin, took a long sip from his glass, then leaned forward and said the words I will replay in my head until the day I die. She owns the company that just demoted you, Nathan. The silence hit like a dropped wine glass. No crash, just the sound of everything that wasn't said. I watched Nathan freeze, mid-smirk, mid-breath, mid-arrogance. His fork hovered inches from his plate, his mouth open just enough to look ridiculous. It was perfect. It was poetry. And for a full 3 seconds, no one at the table moved. Now here's the thing about humiliation, it doesn't land right away. It creeps in, like a slow leak in a tire. Nathan looked at Uncle Ray, then at me, like he was trying to piece together a puzzle that didn't come with instructions. What's he talking about? He asked, his voice brittle around the edges. I shrugged like I didn't care, like this moment wasn't the exact scenario I'd rehearsed 100 nights while eating dinner alone at my desk. I don't know, I said, sipping my water. Maybe you should talk to HR. I hear they've got answers. Let me rewind a second. Nathan thinks he's still VP of Strategy at Carter Global. What he doesn't know is that 2 months ago, the board was restructured. What he doesn't know is that the silent investor who's been acquiring controlling interest in the firm for the past year is not some hedge fund or European holding group. It's me. It's been me. Every bit of condescension, every pat on the head, every maybe she'll get married and stop trying just fueled my focus. He doesn't know yet that the woman he called a hobbyist is now the one who signs his paycheck. Or at least, used to. He's about to find out what happens when the person you underestimated the most decides she's done waiting for recognition. And before you say anything, yes, I know how petty that sounds. But you weren't in that dining room. You didn't hear him laugh. That moment didn't just satisfy me. It rewrote the balance of power in that family in under 6 words. 6 words. Go ahead, count them if you don't believe me. She owns the company that just demoted you. Wait, damn it. That's 7. Whatever. You get the point. I looked around the table. Aunt Linda had her mouth open, as if words were going to form eventually, but hadn't gotten there yet. My mother blinked once, twice, and reached for her wine like it might save her from drowning. The only one smiling was Uncle Ray, and it wasn't smug. It was proud. Nathan finally spoke again. That's not possible. And that's where I decided I wasn't going to explain it. I wasn't going to hand him closure wrapped in neat little corporate bullet points. I stood up, fixed my skirt, and looked him straight in the eye. Guess you should have paid attention, I said. Maybe next time you'll learn the difference between a hobbyist and a CEO. Then I walked out. Didn't wait for dessert. Didn't wait for my mother's guilt-ridden sighs or for Nathan's sputtered excuses. The room behind me cracked open like a dropped mirror. But that was just the beginning. Because the truth is, revenge isn't about one good line or a dramatic exit. It's about the long game. And baby, I was just getting started. People think power happens in boardrooms, with suits and handshakes and gold pens that write billion-dollar checks. But that's not where it starts, not really. Real power is born in the quiet places, the unnoticed corners, the nights no one else sees because you're the only one still awake. That's where I built mine, alone, underestimated, and absolutely determined to make the people who ignored me regret every polite smile they threw my way like confetti. It started in a concrete dorm room at Wharton, freshman year. I'd gotten in on a scholarship, and that fact followed me like a stray dog that just wouldn't die. Everyone else had designer backpacks and parents with business cards, while I had a prepaid meal plan and a single pair of decent heels that I only wore to interviews. The professor asked a question about startup capital on day 3, and before I could raise my hand, a boy in salmon shorts turned around and said, "This might be above your tax bracket, sweetheart." His name wasn't Nathan, but it may as well have been. For the next 4 years, I didn't party, I didn't travel, and I didn't chase anyone. I watched. I studied. I absorbed everything like a sponge dipped in scotch. I read books that weren't on the syllabus and shadowed professors during office hours so frequently they eventually stopped checking the sign-up list. While everyone else posted photos of internships and rooftop bars, I was building something no one could see. My first startup was a total disaster. I called it Cortex Supply, and it was supposed to be a boutique sourcing platform for eco-conscious manufacturers. That phrase alone should tell you I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I maxed out 1 credit card, burned through 3 friends' goodwill, and nearly had to drop out when I realized my margins were so thin I could practically see through them. But failure has this strange way of sharpening you. It humbles you, sure, but it also makes you reckless in a good way, like a boxer who's already been hit hard enough to stop fearing the punch. I learned every painful lesson from that mess. And when Cortex finally folded, I walked away without debt, without shame, and with something much more valuable, the realization that I wasn't trying to sell a product, I was trying to prove I could build something from nothing. After graduation, I went into consulting, because that's what ambitious nobodies do when they need a paycheck and credibility. I wore the uniform, said the buzzwords, and gritted my teeth through meetings with men who shook my hand like they were checking to see if I had bones. My last boss used to call me Jessie no matter how many times I corrected him. He'd lean over my desk with coffee breath and ask, "So what's your 5-year plan, Jessie?" I'd smile, tilt my head just right, and lie through my teeth. My real plan started the moment I cashed my first bonus check. I took 10%, then 20%, then, yes, 200% of my savings. That's right. I invested 200% of everything I had. Before you start foaming at the mouth in the comments, no, that's not mathematically possible. Unless, of course, you're counting margin loans and refinancing the tiny condo your ex-boyfriend left you on the title for. Which I was. The point is, I bet every goddamn thing I had on a shell company I'd set up under the name Vernon Equity, a nod to the street I grew up on. From the outside, it looked like any other ghost investor, low-key, passive, not worth the lawyer's time. But Vernon Equity began buying shares in Carter Global during a moment no one else was paying attention, when Nathan and his circle of genius bros decided to pivot into consumer tech. I knew it would flop. I knew it the way rain is coming from the smell of wet asphalt. And when it did, the stock dipped just enough for me to buy in heavy. It wasn't glamorous. It was slow. Boring, even. I'd come home from my 90-hour weeks and read bored minutes in bed. I memorized who voted which way on every proposal, who showed up late, who played safe, who liked risk. I was building a psychological map of the boardroom, piece by piece, like a detective following a cold trail. Claire, my assistant back then, used to tease me about the way I highlighted reports like I was solving a murder. What she didn't know was, I was killing off the old Carter Global, the boys' club Nathan had been handed like a silver tray, and replacing it with something leaner, smarter, quieter. Something mine. The day I fired the board was a Wednesday. I didn't make a big scene. I didn't even raise my voice. I walked into the conference room in a navy pantsuit that cost more than my first car, dropped a folder onto the table, and calmly explained that Vernon Equity now held a controlling interest in the company. There was silence, of course, except for one guy, Mitchell Glass, who tried to act outraged. I didn't blink. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Your services are no longer needed. You'll be paid through the end of the month." Then I turned to the others. If anyone else feels this arrangement doesn't suit them, speak now. No one did. Cowards. I walked out of that room without looking back. That night, Claire and I split a bottle of champagne on my fire escape and laughed until our sides hurt. She toasted me and said, "To the ghost in the machine." I liked that. It fit. Nathan still didn't know. He was too busy planning an IPO that would never happen. Too distracted by his reflection in other people's compliments to notice the floor disappearing under him. But he was about to feel it. The free fall had already begun. There's a particular kind of satisfaction in walking into a room you weren't invited to and watching every face try to pretend they don't notice. The Carter estate had been decked out like a glossy magazine spread, string lights along the hedges, jazz band tucked beside the pool, waitstaff dressed in crisp black serving wine like it had magic in it. Nathan had pulled out all the stops for this one. I could smell the desperation behind the Chardonnay and shrimp skewers. It was the scent of a man still clinging to the illusion of control, still convinced that throwing money at optics would keep reality at bay. He'd invited the city's most eager investors, a few middle-aged influencers with venture partner in their bios, and, of course, our mother, who showed up in a gown 2 decades too young for her with a look that screamed practiced elegance and habitual disappointment. I wasn't on the list, obviously. But I wasn't here to eat canapes and sip flute bubbles while pretending not to see the cracks in my brother's empire. I was here for something else entirely. I arrived late on purpose, stepping out of a black car that wasn't rented, but looked like it should have been. Claire had offered to come with me for backup, but this was one I needed to walk into alone. The guard at the gate squinted at my name on the guest list and stammered something about clearance. I gave him one of those polite, sharp smiles that says, "I know something you don't," and within 60 seconds, his earpiece buzzed and I was waved through. Even now, the machine still responded to my voice, even if the face didn't match the name on the title. Inside, the room shimmered with the kind of forced charm you only get when half the guests are there for the free booze and the other half are there to be seen. Nathan spotted me as I stepped onto the patio, and his smile collapsed before it could fully form. His eyes scanned the space around me, as if trying to spot some mistake, some other Jessica I might be impersonating. He made his way over with the kind of nervous energy that's hard to hide once you've been cornered by your own lack of foresight. "Well," he said, voice tight like the collar of his overpriced shirt, "didn't think this was your scene." "I like jazz," I replied. "And parties thrown by people who don't know they're hosting me are my favorite kind." He laughed, but it didn't touch his eyes. That's when our mother appeared, her smile frosted over with whatever cocktail of social conditioning and internalized bitterness she'd perfected across 4 decades. She reached out to air-kiss both of us, then took my arm like she was claiming it for the evening. "You can sit next to me, dear," she said, dragging me toward a table set for 16. "There's an empty chair. You probably won't know anyone else here anyway." I didn't fight her. That wasn't the battle tonight. The battle came later, and I needed every piece in place. I sat beside her, legs crossed, posture calm, heart beating steady. She made small talk with the woman on her right about summering in Vermont, then leaned toward me just enough to say, "You could have worn something with sleeves. It's a formal occasion." My dress was fine. Tailored, deep green, sleeveless, confident. But she wasn't talking about the dress. She never was. The speeches started as dessert was being served, mini cheesecakes and carefully torched brulees that tasted like someone had once whispered the word sugar nearby. Nathan clinked his glass and stood, clearing his throat like a man about to deliver a sermon no one asked for. "We're at a turning point," he began, puffing his chest slightly, "in Carter Global's story. Tonight, I'm proud to introduce a new era, one built on innovation, vision, and strategic leadership." A few people clapped on reflex, not knowing where this was going. I waited. Nathan continued, "And while we've all worked hard to maintain this company's legacy, it's time to bring in someone with fresh perspective. Someone to take the reins as CEO and lead us into the next decade." I stood before he could say another word. Every eye turned to me, blinking confusion like they were trying to place a face they half recognized from an old magazine feature. I didn't need a mic. My voice carried, not loud, just clear. Firm. "Thank you, Nathan," I said. "I'll take it from here." You could hear the glasses stop mid-clink, the clatter of a dropped fork, the sound of collective whiplash as every investor's head swiveled toward me. My mother opened her mouth to protest, then shut it, perhaps sensing that whatever was about to happen wasn't the kind of thing you could politely scold into submission. I continued, still calm, still surgical. "As of this quarter, I've assumed the role of CEO at Carter Global, with full backing of the board and controlling interest via Vernon Equity Holdings." I watched Nathan's face collapse in real time, eye twitch, jaw twitch, shoulders folding slightly inward. It was almost too much, almost cruel. "Almost. There will be changes," I added. "Some of them immediate." A pause. A heartbeat. A single cough from someone at the back. "I'll answer questions shortly," I said. "But first, I'd like to enjoy what's left of this lovely meal." I sat down. Just like that. Nathan remained standing, frozen, a man halfway through a speech for a party that was no longer his. The investors didn't ask for clarification. They didn't rush to his defense. They looked at me, the woman who had just flipped the script without raising her voice or needing to shout. And slowly, one by one, they raised their glasses. I didn't toast. I didn't smile. I just picked up my fork and tasted the brulee. It was better than I expected. But the real sweetness was still coming. Revenge doesn't taste the way people think it does. It's not sweet, not rich, not like some gourmet dessert you savor at the end of a long, elegant meal. It's dry. It sticks to the roof of your mouth. It leaves a bitter aftertaste that doesn't wash away with wine or applause or even the stunned silence of a brother who finally understands he's not the smartest person in the room anymore. After the dinner party, there were days I woke up feeling like I'd won something, like I'd climbed the mountain barefoot and stood at the top watching the sun rise on my own damn terms. But there were other mornings, more of them than I expected, where I woke up in the dark and wondered if I'd just become everything I used to hate. Claire, of course, wanted blood. She didn't say it like that, not directly, but I could hear it in the way she poured her coffee, the way she paused just long enough before using the word terminate, the way she started every sentence with, "I mean, if it were me." She'd been by my side through the building years, through the silence and the spreadsheets, and now that we'd arrived at the top, she wanted a proper flag planted in the skull of everyone who'd laughed at us on the way up. "Nathan, obviously, was first on her list. "You know he'd fire you without blinking," she said, eyes locked on her tablet, fingers tapping through legal drafts. "He'd fire you, erase your name, and still have the nerve to post some sanctimonious tribute on LinkedIn about women in leadership." I didn't argue. She was right. Uncle Ray, though, he was the one voice that slowed the engine. He'd called me the next morning, his tone careful, like he already knew I was standing at the edge of a decision and might be ready to jump just for the thrill of it. "I'm proud of you, Jess," he said. "But pride and peace don't always ride in the same car. One usually throws the other out somewhere around mile 20. I sat on my terrace that night, looking out at the city lights, blinking like a circuit board, and thought about that line over and over. Pride and peace. Fire and forgiveness. Nathan and me. He wasn't taking it well, of course. Word had spread quickly. The investors had already rebranded their enthusiasm, attaching themselves to me like barnacles on a newly painted ship. The press loved it, loved the silent sister who'd played the long game and took back her seat at the head of the table. But Nathan? He'd gone dark. No phone calls. No public comments. Just silence. Until the email. It was short. Too short. One sentence, 3 words, "We need to talk." Claire saw it first and nearly slammed her laptop shut. "He doesn't get to set the narrative," she said. "Don't give him the satisfaction of groveling for a meeting. He's not entitled to even that." But I met with him anyway. Call it curiosity. Call it masochism. Call it loyalty trying to pretend it's reason. I told him to come by the office after hours, knowing full well he wouldn't want to be seen walking through the lobby during daylight. When he finally arrived, he was exactly how I expected, well-dressed, well-groomed, and just a little too polished around the edges. But his eyes had that glassy sheen that only shows up after the second drink, the one that tells you whatever he's rehearsed is about to unravel fast. He didn't sit right away. Just stood near the door like a teenager waiting to be sent to the principal's office. Then, finally, he broke the silence. "Do you really hate me that much?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted to. God, I wanted to unload everything. The years of being invisible. The dinners where he spoke over me. The board meetings where he forgot to introduce me. The subtle smirks, the lazy jokes, the sheer gall of watching him fail upward with the ease of a man convinced gravity only applied to other people. But I didn't say any of it. I just looked at him and said, "I don't think I hate you, Nathan. I think I finally stopped needing your approval." He sank into the chair like it had punched him. "I don't know what to do now," he said quietly. "I mean, I don't even know where I fit anymore." I leaned back, tapping a pen against the side of my coffee cup. "You always said you wanted to innovate," I said. "So here's your shot." He blinked. "What do you mean?" "I'm creating a new position," I said, my tone light, too light for what was coming. "Innovation ambassador. You'll travel, give talks, make nice with universities and startups. No actual authority, of course. But you'll have a title, a budget, a corner office with a view." He stared at me like I'd offered him a toothpick in exchange for his house. "So you're benching me," he said. "I'm offering you dignity," I replied. "Which is a hell of a lot more than you ever gave me." There was a beat, a long, hollow pause where the air between us felt thick and irreversible. "Take it or leave it," I said. "But this is the last time we're having this conversation." He stood. He didn't thank me. Didn't curse either. Just walked out with the quiet defeat of a man who'd finally realized the fight was over and he hadn't even brought the right weapons. I thought that was the end of it. Thought I'd written the final chapter, closed the book, shelved it. But 2 nights later, just after 9, I was finishing up some reports when I heard the knock, soft, erratic, a rhythm too drunk to keep time. When I opened the door to my office, there he was. Nathan. Disheveled, red, and swaying like a man caught between 2 versions of himself, one proud, one begging. "Jess," he said, voice cracked from liquor and something worse. "Please. I need my job back." And just like that, the story wasn't over. There are moments in life when silence feels heavier than any shout, When two people look at each other and realize they've been circling the same battlefield for years, lobbing insults like grenades without ever landing a fatal hit. That night, with Nathan slumped in the doorway to my office, reeking of whiskey and sweat and some kind of expensive failure, I realized we had finally run out of places to hide. He wasn't the golden boy anymore, and I wasn't the shadow sister. We were just two people who had run out of excuses, face to face with the wreckage we built together by pretending we didn't care about each other when we always, stupidly, did. He stood there swaying like a tree just after the storms passed, the damage already done, but the trunk still trying to hold itself together. His shirt was wrinkled and his eyes red-rimmed from either crying or not sleeping or maybe both. He looked older than I'd ever seen him look, which was saying something considering the man once spent an entire year getting Botox preventatively before he turned 35. "I know I shouldn't be here," he mumbled, barely meeting my eyes. But I didn't know who else to talk to. I stayed behind my desk longer than I needed to, letting the power sit between us for a beat or two, because yes, I wanted him to feel it. I wanted him to know what it was like to stand on the wrong side of the locked door and wonder whether the person holding the key still gave a damn. "You came drunk," I said, keeping my voice flat. "To a corporate office. In the middle of the night. To ask for your job back." He winced, like hearing it out loud made the truth sharper. "I know how it sounds." "No," I said, standing slowly. "You don't. If you did, you wouldn't have come at all." He didn't respond right away, just looked around the office like it was a foreign country he used to live in but no longer recognized. His gaze landed on a framed photo on my bookshelf, Claire and I at a tech summit in Lisbon, laughing like we'd already won the war. Maybe we had. "I thought I'd have more time," he said quietly. "I thought. I don't know, that I could fix things." "You mean stall," I replied, moving around the desk now, not because I wanted to be closer to him, but because I needed him to see that I wasn't hiding behind titles or tables or years of buried resentment. "You thought you could stall long enough for everyone else to forget how much you screwed up." He sighed, finally sitting in the chair across from me, slumping forward with his hands folded like a confession was trying to escape before he lost the nerve. "I never took you seriously," he said. "Not because I thought you weren't smart or capable or whatever, but because Mom never did. She never treated you like someone who could win. And somewhere along the way, I started thinking she had to be right." I didn't speak. I didn't even blink. Because the thing about truth is that it doesn't always hurt like a knife. Sometimes it just lands in your lap like a dead bird you weren't expecting, and now you have to decide whether to bury it or pretend you never saw it. He went on. "You were always the one doing the real work. I saw it. I figured you'd quit eventually, or marry someone rich and move to Napa or something. And that would have been easier for you?" I asked, the anger bubbling up now, not loud, just hot and steady. "If I'd disappeared, you wouldn't have to compete with someone who knew how the business actually ran." He didn't deny it. That was maybe the first honest thing he'd done all year. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. "But I want to try. I don't care about being the boss anymore. I just want to be part of it. Something real. I want to build something that matters, even if I'm not in charge of it." There was a long silence, the kind that hangs in the air like smoke after a fire. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to win. I'd already won. But standing there with him, watching the ego drip off him like rain off a broken umbrella, I realized winning hadn't made me feel whole. Not completely. Maybe forgiveness wouldn't either. But maybe it could start something else. "I'm not giving you your old job back," I said. "You're done with strategy, acquisitions, all of it." He nodded, slowly, like he already knew what was coming. "But there's one role open," I continued. "One you're uniquely qualified for." His eyes narrowed slightly, suspicion flickering behind the exhaustion. "Innovation ambassador," I said. "You'll travel. Represent us at conferences. Be the shiny face in shiny suits shaking hands with future partners. No decision-making power, no influence on the board." "You answered directly to Claire." He blinked like he hadn't heard me right. "To Claire." Yes, I said, folding my arms. You'll report to the woman who carried this company's vision while you were busy basking in inherited glory. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he smiled, a small, tired, lopsided smile that felt more like surrender than sarcasm. She's going to love that. She already does, I said. But don't try to charm her. She's smarter than both of us, and she has less to lose. He nodded again, stood, and straightened his jacket like it still mattered. I'll do it, he said. For real this time. He walked to the door, paused, then turned back to look at me one last time. Thank you, he said, and I believed he meant it. I didn't reply. I just sat down at my desk, picked up my pen, and got back to work. But before he left, he stopped outside Claire's office. I watched through the glass as she opened the door and he extended a hand, hesitant, respectful, and maybe for the first time in his life, humble. She looked at him for a moment, then shook it. He looked at her like he looked at me 5 years ago. And I knew then, he finally understood who the boss was.